side conversation, we were already talking about a compressor of an air intake chamber where fuel is introduced. So when you're talking about the combustion chamber and the igniter's in there, as we're already talking about, we're already starting to talk about this. So these notes are just notes for you to write down to reiterate what we're already talking about. And like I said, this first class is just to give you guys a basis of how engines work, because when we start talking about the magneto, it's important to know how the engine works. But I'm not going to quiz you on every single word. And
what was the 14th word on the 11th slide on Tuesday?
Like I said, there's sponges out there that can tell you that. I am not a sponge, and I don't expect you to be one, but if you are, that's even better. I think there's something else on this side. Let me make sure. There it is. So remember what I said earlier? The fuel is spraying like a blowtorch. I'm sure all of you guys have played with blowtorches.
Still do.
Yep.
Aquanet the lighter.
That's right.
Aquanet is hairspray for people in that because you don't know. You definitely don't know about Aquanet.
Maybe he never uses hairspray. What does he know about hairspray?
I don't think his mom did either.
What are you, like 5 years, 10 years older than he is?
Oh no, I'm way up.
Yeah, I'm pretty low.
I'm older than that.
As I get older, I realize that age gap of 20 years really isn't that big of a deal. It's so small compared to the scheme of years in life and everything. Shit, Lonnie's almost old enough to be my grandfather.
I'll make you a great grandfather.
Huh?
Maybe you're your great grandfather.
Oh no, that's pushing it.
Good old Papa.
Maybe in that.
Maybe in Louisiana.
Yeah, maybe in some of those places. But yeah, Lonnie's almost 40 years older than I am, so very well could be my grandfather.
That's a young grandfather.
Well, my mom also had her kids when she was 21 and 22 or 23. So, yeah, I hope to not be a grandparent. That would be scary to be a grandparent. But a lot of people are. Their kids are 20. I have a boss who's 43. He's already got a 4-year-old granddaughter. And his wife is and his wife is 30.
Oh, it's a daughter though.
Wait, the
The daughter's 20. So she's 21 and he's 43. And we do the math. I mean, 19. He was 18, 19. So
No, it's not that young.
well, unless there's people who I've been to school with people who had kids when they were 14 or 15.
Oh, Jesus. When you went to
there's a
school.
whole
Yeah, when I went to
show about it.
See that?
So their kids are already looking to graduate high school.
Yeah, I have.
So if you think about it, I mean, it's really. But people can have kids in the wide range, 19. You can be all the way until 40, 50, whatever. Men seem to have them when they're. I mean, look at Hugh Hefner. What has he got? Like 10 generations of children. Okay, ready for
From
next
10
slide?
different generations of children.
Here's a picture of what we're talking about. So the compressor. What is this little guy here? What are these little guys called?
Combustion chamber.
Combustion chambers. So fuel injectors right here. So it's dip it right into the combustion chamber, just like my buddy over here said before break, right? So it works a little different than a recip. Obviously, there isn't valves, pistons going up and down. So everybody kind of understand and see what that is. I think this is in the. There's a picture of this also in the power plant book. This exact picture. I know these are pictures taken from a 2004 book, but I believe they're still in the newer ones. I actually have a newer book that I've seen it in. So, and you guys will learn a lot more about turbines, obviously, in turbines class. But the main thing we're going to be talking about in this class is the igniter. So when we go through igniters and when we do those, we're usually involving turbines. Okay? So
For this
everybody
class,
kind
what book would you prefer?
Huh?
What book would you recommend for this class? The new one or the old one?
I have to recommend the new one because that's the book that's out. So, I do like that green power plant book. I don't know the Glencoe one. That's older. I have the newer one here. It has just as much information, but when I'm talking about the older books, I'm talking about like the AC 4313 and stuff.
Oh.
They've changed those over the years. So if you have your old one from General, keep it. It's like a gold mine.
That's what I'm reading from this, for this one.
Yeah. So the old one
Those
is
are online too.
Yeah, but the-
website.
yeah, but I also like having. I like touching stuff.
Yeah.
So this is the one that I'm going to be referencing in this class. Okay? And then, like I said, it wouldn't hurt you guys to read the ignitions part of this book. Yes.
Is that one available in the bookstore or?
I saw it this morning.
So it's available in the bookstore, and it's available online, I believe.
Cheaper on
There's an
Amazon.
online copy.
Is it?
So
Or
if
doesn't-
you're-
that one's like
It's way cheaper off the FAA site.
And
I think it's
just for the record, for what college books cost, these are nothing.
No.
I about flipped. I almost had a heart attack when I saw that I had like 6 books for general to get. I was almost crying because I was on a budget, and I'm like, all my books from other classes cost like $100 a piece. I can't afford $500-600. And when I went to the store, and they're like, it's under $100 for all these books. I'm like, so, but instruction manuals aren't that expensive, but they're very useful. So if you don't have this book, please get one. He said they're in the bookstore, and you can also get it online. So. He said that Kennedy over there said so. So if it's not there, okay.
It was there at 8 o'clock this morning, so they're not there.
Oh, now you're sliding the time, huh?
Yes.
When I was there.
You gotta check the top shelf and the bottom shelf. There's
And
two
the
locations.
location now?
It has to
There's a
change
used location, there's a newer location.
In every aircraft engine, the spark must spark constantly every time when needed. So basically, it's got to work. It's got to give you the spark when you need it.
What happens if it doesn't and it doesn't late? Does it like just blow up on you or something?
That's one of the things that we'll talk about. That
So
is
we
a-
hear the knocking because then it becomes uneven or something.
yeah. So we'll go through. I'll go through detonation and pre-ignition, which are common factors if the timing is off. So we're gonna talk about Powell's magic angle. Some of you guys said they knew what Powell's magic angle is, right? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
important. We're gonna go through it anyway, but it is important for it to happen at that time. If it doesn't, these are some of the things that can happen, and knocking noise is one of them that you'll hear. And I'll show you pictures of what could happen. So here's a good one right here. Even when the spark occurs perfectly, it is common to have a cylinder misfire partly for many reasons, and we'll discuss those many reasons. It's not like 100 reasons, but see, when you guys go into recips, you're gonna be right on top of it. You're gonna tell Lonnie I don't need that stuff. I've already seen it.
I don't recommend doing that.
I wouldn't either. He doesn't like it when students are like, well, I already know everything. Trust me, he'll find something you don't know. So my guys that have had recips, what are some of the reasons that it could misfire?
The wrong fuel.
Hmm?
Wrong fuel.
Wrong fuel? I hope you don't have the wrong fuel in there.
Pre-ignition, detonation.
What about a foul spark plug?
Yeah, if it's foul spark plug, it won't ignite, or if it's off timing,
The timing's off, yeah.
or if it's overheated, it could detonate.
Does everybody have that written down? Give you a minute. Some people I never see write down. They must like do it really quickly or something. Or they just take a picture. Okay, we're gonna move on. So when I'm talking about Powell's magic angle, I'm gonna have written notes on this, but I'm gonna go through this picture that happens to be here. We'll see this picture more than once today. Is you need it to happen 15 degrees before top dead center. So the spark is going to happen back here. This is top dead center, and this is peak of pressure. If this spark occurs at any other moment, could cause some problems. Everybody kind of see that? I know it's kind of hard to visualize, but as we go through the slides, you'll get a little bit more. So the reason why we want the spark to happen 15 degrees before top dead center, I don't know who was really smart and figured out that that's when it needs to occur in these engines. They're a lot smarter than I am, but they realized that it's going to take time for it to get up to top dead center, right? It's going to take time to get up here. Everything's moving and stuff, so you have to give it time to travel there because you're going to want it at its peak pressure before it pushes the piston back down. And we don't want it at completely at top dead center because if you're straight up and down and I give you the most power, what's going to happen?
Snap the piston rod.
It's going to bend. It's not going to do anything. It's going to hit it just like hitting it down with a hammer. But when you're kind of bent like this, it's going to push it and make the rotation go around, right? So I'm going to have pictures showing that. This is a diagram. So when you see this, if you see this in any other class, this is the spark comes here because it's 15 degrees before top dead center. And then also your 25 degrees before peak of pressure or whatever.
The peak pressure is supposed to be like, what, 7 degrees after top dead center? Something like that.
7 degrees.
After when is peak pressure supposed to happen? The exact degrees of crankshaft rotation.
Well, it depends on the engine, but most of the time it's 25 degrees. After top dead center.
You're talking about the little rod, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The connecting rod. So that's connected to the piston. So the piston's straight up and down. We don't want to ignite it right there. We don't want to hit the
So
pressure.
you ignite
down.
it at 15 degrees.
15 degrees, so you're going to spark at 15 degrees
Huh.
because the peak of pressure is going to be up here. So the piston's already going to go past top dead center. So if our peak of pressure was here and the ignition happened right up here, it's going to hit right down. It's going to go straight down. There's nothing that it's going to go. It's just going to take it all. It's going to take all the force. And sometimes it'll bend the connecting rod. I actually have a picture of that. There's plenty of things it does to the piston, but I never see what does the connecting rod. I don't know why people don't show pictures of that. And the one I think I have is actually from a car, believe it or not. Okay, so the engine also needs sparking to occur differently at different times. RPM is the most significant factor on when to spark the fuel air. So, in an airplane, we're usually running the airplane close to the same RPMs all the time. So in cars, when we're talking about cars, you may adjust the timing. But for airplanes, we're usually running at the same RPM, so we really don't have to adjust timing for different. It's always, you're always looking for that 15 degrees before top dead center most engines. But when we're talking about RPM, most of the time we're at the same RPM or pretty close. Okay, so let me know when you have that written down. Everybody have that down? If you don't, please speak up. I'll wait for you. Okay, so bottom one. Load air fill ratio, intake air density, and temperature are also factors. So when we're talking about RPM, the only time that this is actually going to be affected is when you're starting up the engine because the engine's not going as fast, right? And we'll start talking about an impulse coupling as we get going, and that's going to help with that. So that's the only different time when you're really talking about difference with RPM, because when you first start up the engine, it's not moving as fast. So you're going to want to retard that spark, because if you don't, it's going to take longer to get to its destination, right? So you're going to have to pull it back to give it enough time to get where it needs to go. Okay? Does everybody kind of understand that?
Maybe it'll make more sense as you go on.
It will. When I start talking about the impulse coupling and we'll talk about retarding the spark, it'll make a little bit more sense. And all this stuff we're going to continuously talk about throughout the course of the class. I'm hoping everybody was done because I just went to the next slide. Okay, the rate of fuel burning stays fairly constant, about 200 feet per second. Your recipient engine needs to have the maximum average pressure occur at 15 degrees after top dead center. Sorry, it's 15, not 25. I apologize.
200 feet per s-
But I do like that 7 number. I haven't heard 7.
I think it was in reference to like American V8s. Muscle car.
And when I think of 25 degrees after top dead center, I'm also thinking about the bigger engines because the cylinder, the piston is bigger. So the bigger ones, the bigger the piston diameter, the further degrees are going to be passed. Because 25 degrees after top dead center is like something that sticks into my head. 15 is not usually.
Is that 200 feet per second?
Yes. Everybody got that down?
almost.
We know you're ready. How's Magic Game? Pal is some guy's name, so if you guys are wondering where it came from, most everything that we learn about is somebody's name, like Lenz's Law. The guy's name happened to be Lenz. Yep. Everybody got that?
The auto cycle.
This guy's name was Otto. Okay, so here's another picture of it. So what do we say, 15 degrees after top dead center? Is when it's going to happen. So most of the time the spark, I'm thinking the opposite, the spark would be 25 degrees after top dead center. So 25, 15. And here I was just telling you guys that numbers was my thing.
Right numbers on your.
Yeah, numbers just not. Yeah. I knew it was somebody's birthday, I just didn't know it was your birthday. So same thing I was talking about before. Spark happens here, top dead center. Peak of pressure is going to be up here. That's going to be our magic angle. Okay. Like I said, the reason why it happens here and not directly here is we got to factor in the engine's turning. It's got to give itself time. This thing happens instantly. I mean, it's quick. It's really, really fast. It may seem like it's slow looking at it at this point, but they're like slowing it down for you. This happens within, I don't know, split second, yeah, milliseconds.
Also, the reason why you have to start it so far in advance is because you have to wait for the flame front to travel from the spark plug and then to eventually reach peak cylinder pressure.
Right, and then, so in the bigger ones, so we have 2 spark plugs in there, right? So part of the reason we have 2 spark plugs is for redundancy, but the also for bigger cylinders is so they both fire that they can get the flame there quicker.
Yeah, because if you only had one spark plug in a 6 or 7 inch diameter piston or bigger, the flame front can't travel to the other side of the cylinder fast enough for it to actually make peak cylinder pressure. It's just inefficient as all get out.
Did you guys all hear that? You guys look really live. We're gonna take lunch here very shortly, I promise. And now 1 minute past here. But I kind of want to get a little bit further into the slides because I still have 20 more slides to go before I put you guys in lab. So we're probably only going to spend, if we spend any time in lab, it's going to be a short amount of time. But I'm just going to have you guys go through your manual because next week we're going to take it apart all as a class. So you'll have everything sprawled out. So next week I would sit by your partners, or partner. Okay, so right here.
Good way to break stuff.
What?
Good way to break stuff.
Good way to break stuff, right? So we were just talking about this. So 0 degrees at top dead center. We don't want that force to happen right there, right? Because where's this, there's no momentum going down here. It's just going to go straight down. It's kind of a visual aid here. So does everybody kind of see that? everybody get down what they wanted to off that slide? So now you're visually seeing it. So now we got a little bend in here, right? So maximum pressure must occur at this point. Like I said, it was discovered a long time ago on this particular angle. Who discovered it? Hal did with his buddies. Figured if it happens at this point, it will give me the maximum pressure I need to make it spin all the way around, the most efficient I can make the engine. Does everybody get that? It's pretty easy when you start visually seeing it, right?
That's right.
All right, why don't you guys take a lunch for 30 minutes and we'll come back, we'll finish up the slides, and then we'll go to lab.